All right, so let's go ahead and get this thing started today. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sitting through this presentation. I promise this is going to be very informative, and it's going to be a little bit of fun too. So, without any further ado, we're going to just get going. Hit the clicker. We'll go. Hey, clicker. Let's try that. All right, so who is Anden? Well, to give you just kind of a 411 on who Anden is, we are actually the oldest indoor air quality dehumidification, humidification company in North America. But you've probably never heard of the name. That's because we are the new agriculture line of a 80-year-old company called April Air. A lot of people have April Air inside of their home. A lot of people don't even know it. But if you have ever had anything, humidifier, dehumidifier, any type of control system from a company like, say, Trane, Lennox, York, Carrier, Bryant, etc., 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 we make it. So we've been doing this for a very long time. And because we have been doing things like this for so very, very long, as things like grow rooms started going up all across the country, HVAC contractors that were putting in HVAC equipment would get asked, what type of equipment should we put in? What kind of dehumidifiers can we use? What kind of humidifiers could we use? So here I am sitting at my desk about 4 years ago working for April Air, and I see that we are selling dehumidifiers into like Arizona, into Colorado. Like, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Why am I selling humidifiers into Florida? And it didn't take too long for us to figure out what was going on. But it's not good enough for us to just decide that we're going to do something inside of a market. More important than anything else, we want to make sure that when we get into a market, we are doing things the right way. And what we learned relatively quickly was everybody had taken equipment that was designed to go into your basement, your attic, your crawl space, whatever, added some beef to it and said it was going to work. The answer was, it may not fail, but that doesn't mean it's not going to work. So we needed to go in and we need to actually learn what was going on. And part of any good company is coming up with a cool name. So when we decided we're going to do an industrial agriculture brand, for those of you who know, little cheat here. Stop. All right. Anden is not a name that we pulled out of nowhere. This is actually a people. The Anden are the people of the Andes Mountain who used to create agriculture all the mountainsides. You've probably seen images like that before going across the internet. You never knew what it was, right? But the Peruvian cultures of the Andes Mountains are the masters of the growing environment. They were the ones who first adapted rough, major environments to be able to do cultivation on it. We thought, wow, what a cool idea for a name for a company, because that's exactly what we're doing. We're taking extreme environments and we're trying to adapt them to get the best cultivation out of there possible. So that's where Anden came from. So let me ask you a question. On screen is the best chocolate cake recipe ever. Is it? I don't know. I pulled it off the internet. It claims to be. So, best chocolate cake recipe ever. So if I gave you those ingredients, could you bake me the best chocolate cake you've ever made? The answer is probably not, right? What temperature are you going to bake it at? For how long? What kind of oven do you need? As I spent my first 2 years working in the agricultural world, I met a lot of cultivators in a lot of different places all across multiple countries, and I found out that a lot of people knew how to make a good chocolate cake, right? They knew the ingredients. They knew exactly what type of soil they wanted to use or water speed system. They knew exactly what type of lighting, how much to go into a space. But nobody could seem to agree on how to bake the cake. And the answer is because the information was incomplete. If the information is incomplete, you cannot make the recipe. You need to know every single thing that's going on. Anden, or April Air back then, knew how to make good dehumidifiers, good humidifiers. We made millions of them. They were running in people's homes, but we had no idea what they were going to be asked to do. And if we didn't know what they were going to be asked to do, how could we possibly make a dehumidifier that was going to do the job the right way? We had to go out and we had to learn so that when we delivered product, it looked like the cake on the right and not the cake on the left. And you would talk to all these cultivators and all these growers, and so many of them would tell you that they've had a lot of crops that turned out like the cake on the left, when what they were going for was the cake on the right. The recipe was incomplete. Now you add some instructions to this thing, you can put a pretty good cake together. Size of the pan, the amount of temperature, how long it's got to bake, you've got to be able to add all these things up. When we looked at how people were controlling the temperature and the humidity levels inside of their growing facilities, Everybody had an idea of where they wanted it to be at. Maybe I wanted it at 75 degrees, maybe I wanted it at 55% humidity. Nobody had a clue on how to make it happen. We didn't either. You have to go out and you have to learn what you don't know. And it starts with talking to people who do know. So we took 2 years. I won't explain this whole slide, it's a lot of words. But the point is, the first thing that we needed to know if we were going to make a dehumidifier that was going to do the job was, how does a plant react to humidity? We knew how to make you comfortable, right? We knew how to make people feel good. That doesn't mean we know anything about how to make a plant feel good, or why we should, or what drives it, or what its needs are. So we went and we actually took time to learn what it means to do a plant, and what it means to make something grow. And we based our systems and our controls and the way that we were going to do things off of that. We knew it was pretty simple. Sorry about all the feedback here. As a matter of fact, can you hear me? I mean, I was a public speaker for a decade. I got a pretty loud voice. All right. So, we knew this was the goal. The goal was to be able to take, is this thing got a little pointer? Oh, look at that. We knew we wanted these to be the place that we were pulling in the nutrients. We knew we wanted that to be the place where the plant was getting all of its food, so to speak. Because that was how the effect of the grow was going to be. A plant was going to only take it in from one of two places, here or here. And it had a lot to do with where the water was and how it was coming out of the plant. So, what do? You build a system based upon how a plant reacts to the air. Now, you might say to yourself, well, any dehumidifier can do that. Well, any dehumidifier is supposed to be able to do that, but a dehumidifier is nothing more than like an engine inside of your car. If you don't give it a gas pedal and a brake pedal and some regulators, it just goes. That doesn't mean it's doing its job. So we needed to figure out how could we make the plant feel good so that the plant could get the uptake in the humidity level. That meant going to hundreds of grows, all of which had nothing in common. Every single one of them is different. It was shaped different. It was sized different. Those dehumidifiers had, grows had different types of systems working in them. You couldn't even get the same temperature in 5 feet of the same grow. I could walk over to this side of the grow, and the temperature over here could be 78 degrees, and back over there it was 80. And people would be like, well, it's no big deal. The average temperature in here is 78, and the average, yada, 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 go on. Well, the answer, it is a big deal. Because if it's 78 degrees over here and 80 over there, it's 4% less relative humidity over here than it is over here. That means you've got a plant over here that is capable of bringing in more water and more nutrient with that water, because it is able to balance itself better and get more out versus the plant over there. You had to fix it. This was a problem. How do you learn how to fix the problem? Well, this isn't as new as this industry is, let's face it. These things have been going on for a very long time. So what do? You make friends. You work with the best people you possibly can, and you get them to help you design these types of products in these types of facilities. Enter one of our good friends, Greg. Greg is the manager and master cultivator for Shango. Shango is a big facility in Las Vegas, Nevada, part of the Chong's Choice brand. Greg was having a problem. Greg's rooms were not where he wanted them to be. They didn't know any way around it. So what we did is we sent out the team of engineers, the Anden group, and we decided we were going to finally solve this issue. And it came down to designing control systems and designing dehumidifiers that were going to be able to adapt. So I'm going to let Greg speak for himself here just for a second to let you know why he made the changes that he did, and then we'll talk about how we did it. Oh, do we have some? Yeah.
Love growing weed. I just absolutely love it. I say it without being cliche, but it's truly something you love, and you just can't beat it.
I just enjoy the challenge of growing the product. It's a complicated, multifaceted job. It's constant change. And it keeps you on your toes, keeps you interested and engaged every day. The better control you have over humidity, the safer your crop's going to be, the better product you can provide to your customers. And at the end of the day, at a better price point.
Through controlling your environment, you could go anywhere from half a pound of light by not controlling your environment, up to 4 pounds of light by having it absolutely on point.
So our current dehumidification setup was less than desirable, and approached us with the opportunity to give their units a shot and see if we could improve our relative humidity throughout the cycle.
So I've never really dealt with another distributor that comes out, logs data. They actually helped me place the units in the room. I thought I knew it all. Showed me why I was putting in the wrong spot, which is fantastic. Yeah, I've never dealt with another distributor that has that kind of service, so it's great.
The end advantage is everything that we have to offer. We have a fully staffed technical support team. We have people on call 24/7, ready to answer phone calls to help you walk through any kind of technical issues you may have. It is relatively easy to install our products, but giving that support on the backside is really what matters to a cultivator. The cannabis cultivation goes on 24/7, 365, and our customers expect that kind of service from us.
Did a little research and realized that Anden is April Air. I've had some experience with April Air at a couple facilities where I ran their dehumidifiers and loved them. Performed as rated, which is pretty rare. So, yeah, we're doing some testing for them, and if everything goes well with the testing, we'll replace everything in the facility and use them from here on out for all the new builds.
So that was where we started. I don't know anything about how to make good, to make cannabis grow large. I have no idea, but I know how to make an environment balance. That's what we know how to do. So we wanted to work with the experts who actually knew what the two pieces combined had to look like. That's where this test came in. We got fairly lucky with Greg. He had used the April Air versions before and he had liked it. So he's going to be back in this a little bit later and he's going to tell you how that all wrapped up when it was all said and done. But that was what we needed to do. Before we built one single product, we needed to go in. Behind calculating how to do a room and how to size and how to control a room the right way are hundreds of growers and facility engineers and design experts. This isn't one singular source. We have the engineering team that has over 100 years of just building dehumidifiers behind them. Combined. They haven't been building for actually 100 years, but they all have their own little expertise. And the idea was, master the environment, you can master the method. Again, as I was saying earlier, really what it came down to most was temperature. Dehumidifiers are very simple creatures. You tell them I want it to have 55% relative humidity, they will do everything they can to get you there. Except if you have a dehumidifier mounted up by that light is putting off heat. If that is where the dehumidifier is measuring relative humidity, it's not consistent. Then you put one over here where there is not, look, it just adds up, okay? So one of the first things that we learned that we had to do was you had to change how a dehumidifier measured. And you had to change where it measured. Well, that's pretty simple to do. You measure it through a different type of control. Now, April Air happened to be a controls company on top of everything else that they did. So when we built these, we kind of cheated. Actually, we cheated pretty badly. The controls that we had, that we already had at our disposal, were 70% more accurate than anything else that was on the market. And because we own the company, we didn't have to pay hundreds of dollars to put these controls in with these dehumidifiers. It was something that we could just include because it made sense. So with every Anden, we decided when we set up a room, it was important to measure humidity where the plant was reacting to it. So when you're setting up your room and you're using a dehumidifier, that's one of the first key elements I can tell you absolutely need to do. Do not measure your humidity where the dehumidifier is. Do not measure humidity too low to the ground. Understand where you want your plant to be and measure it directly there. The controls can do that. As a matter of fact, I've been in a couple of grows. We did one in British Columbia where they actually put theirs on a slider. So the control's on the slider, so as their canopy height rises, they raise the control with it so that the microclimate around the plant is what we're measuring. Easy to do, and a good way to make sure that you are getting the right type of relative humidity in that space. The bigger problem was nobody had ever built a dehumidifier for agriculture. It had never been done. Every dehumidifier that had ever existed, including the Aprilaire models, had been built around one standard. That was called 80 degrees and 60% relative humidity. Because back in 1967, a group of people called the Association of Home Appliance Manufacturers said that's what a dehumidifier should be rated at. In 1967, that made a whole lot of sense. You didn't have things like central air, okay? Because you didn't have central air, your house was about 80 degrees and it was about 60% relative humidity. You know, 51 years later, a lot has changed, but the rating never did. So what did every single dehumidifier company do? They built to the rating. Why wouldn't you? You build a dehumidifier that's meant to work at 80 degrees and 60% relative humidity, and you build that as best as you can, so that you get the best looking numbers, so that you can make the best looking product. That's great. That's great for your home. Aprilaire will always make a home dehumidifier that way, but that does not exist in a grow room. It just doesn't. And if it does, it's for a couple of weeks at best. And then once you get out of that, you are going to be out of spec. Now, a lot of companies build really good dehumidifiers and they're very, very honest about how they do it. This is a good example. Ideal Air shows you right on their box how humidity is affected by temperature. If you look, and this is right on, at 8680, the DS190 does 190 pints a day. It will. I've tested them. But who grows at 8680? So take it down to 8060, the AHAM spec, and it does 115. That's not a reflection on the dehumidifier. That's physics. That's just how it works. You take it down even lower than that, you lose even more capacity. So when we looked at these charts, we said, well, your goal is to build something that works really well right here. Because if you can do that, and you can combine that with a control that monitors it the right way, you can start to solve the biggest problem in the environment, which are those microclimates going out of control. Your room might think it's 60% relative humidity, but around your plant, it's 65. And that's something that you had to be able to change. So to do it, it's actually not that difficult. You just got to put 6 things in a dehumidifier in order to make them control the environment in your world the right way. First thing is you got to use an ECM blower, and you got to use a scroll compressor, and don't worry, these jargon words, I'll explain them in just a minute, okay? But it's more impactful if I say 6 things and then label them all. All right, high quality TXV valve crankcase heater, electrically charged coating, and a control that is worth its weight. If you do those 6 things, you can create a dehumidifier. Remember where I said we cheat? Anybody can put those 6 things in a dehumidifier and do the exact same thing as the units that we are selling today. The difference is we own the technologies to a lot of them, and we work with some of the biggest companies in the world, so we get to buy at a special price. So anybody could do that, but the cost would not be the same. Let me explain why these are important to you. Why do you need a blower that's called an ECM blower? An ECM blower has one job: speed up as your filter gets dirty. A dehumidifier only works if there's air moving across the coil. Every other dehumidifier uses a standard blower. Those standard blowers, as you put particulate on your filter, cannot pull any more air through there. So there's less air moving around the coil. If there's less air going across the coil, you're not getting water out of it. Simple math. That's why dehumidifiers are told you got to change the filters so regularly. The blowers that we use will actually speed up. So as that filter gets more dirty, our blower increases in speed in order to make sure we're pulling that much air still across the dehumidifier. Consistency helps you with your grow. These 3 things, scroll compressor, quality TXV valve, and crankcase heater, they have one job in mind, and that is what happens when the lights go off. When the lights go off, we get that spike. And that spike prevents our plants from getting the right amount of nutrients the right amount of time. So what these 3 components combined do is allow our dehumidifier to get up to capacity at a fraction of the time that the normal dehumidifier takes. Most dehumidifiers take about 20 minutes from when they turn on to being able to remove their total amount of capacity. Ours take less than 5. That's a big deal when the lights go out. You want to trap that right away so that your plants who are opening up in order to bring in that nutrient are capable of doing it. The electrically charged coating, it's a really fancy way of saying that if you don't coat the coil on your dehumidifier and you don't do it the right way, all the stuff that is involved in your nutrients, the fertilizer and everything else, when that plant off-gasses humidity, it off-gases plenty of that as well. What's happening, you may have experienced that with some other dehumidifiers before, including some of the old ones that we used to make. What was happening is all those extra chemicals, well, they like to go right onto the metal brazing joints inside of a dehumidifier and eat them away. And when they eat them away, leaks happen, capacity drops, rust happens. This is a system that is used by the best air conditioners on the planet. It's called electrofin coating. It protects against 90 more chemicals than any other coating does on aluminum fins. That's what that's designed to do. And then a digital control. Well, that's a really easy conversation. If you want your plant to be 55, it should be 55. Why is it a big deal? Again, we get to cheat with technology. That control has an accuracy of plus minus 1.5%. That's ridiculously good. The industry average is 5. Look, there's only one universal truth when it comes to dehumidifiers, no matter what the brand, no matter who makes it or where it's made. The only time a dehumidifier doesn't cost you money, anybody know when? When it isn't running. When it's not running. That's exactly right. That's the only time a dehumidifier doesn't cost you money. Every one of those components are designed to be able to identify the job more quickly. And then once you've identified it that quickly, solve the problem quickly, and shut off. You can build dehumidifiers to be these unbelievably beautiful, energy-efficient devices. But if they have to run all the time, what good does it do you? Right? Somebody explained it to me once. They said it's like the Toyota Prius. The Toyota Prius is phenomenal on gas until you drive it at 80 miles an hour. Then that efficiency goes down. Well, all these dehumidifiers have been designed to run in your house. They were designed to run a few hours a day, not all day, every day. That's where these components all came together. And that's why you need to build them that way. By doing all of that, you could actually start to average out your room. You could actually start to get that room under control. And then because we were a really cool controls company, we gave one additional feature. And that's the ability to control and monitor it, including your temperature, your heating and cooling system. From anywhere on Earth, you can have a cell phone signal. Anybody seen that commercial? I forget the car company. Dude locks his keys in his car and the girl on the space station who's outside unlocks the car. Yeah, we actually have that capability because there's Wi-Fi on the International Space Station. You throw the girl if you were there. So that's one of the things that these things are capable of doing. Let me give you a good example. We have a cultivator that we work with out of he lives in Corpus Christi, Texas. His grow is in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And he had HVAC contractors that were keeping track of all of his equipment. Well, one of the HVAC contractors went out there to perform maintenance on the air conditioning system. They forgot to close the Schrader valve, and that Schrader valve is in charge of keeping the refrigerant inside your air conditioner. Lights turn on, air conditioner can't get any refrigerant, so what happens to the heat in that room? Skyrockets. The second that room got 1 degree over temperature, that control sent a text message to his phone saying that your room is out of balance. The contractor was called, and his room was fixed in 45 minutes. It saved a $250,000 crop. These are things that you're capable of doing. And by the way, this cool one right here, that has multi-sensor blah 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 blah. Let me just say what it does. You can put that in a room that's as big as this warehouse. Put sensors there, all connected back to that one thing, and it will take independent temperature and humidity readings, average them all out, and adjust the components inside in order to make sure that it's getting the job done the right way. What's that? Let's go. Yep. Each unit goes accordingly. That's the type of technology that most people have to pay $10,000+ for. Those controls are a few $100. Yeah, we own them, so you get to cheat. And then make sure they work. These aren't going into your attic. They're going into unbelievable, stressful environments. We own Halt testing systems at April Air and Anden. These are machines that have one job: break things. And by bumping them and shaking them and freezing them and superheating them and everything else, you can tell how long a unit's going to last. The average life expectancy of the Anden line is 14 years on the dehumidifiers. We give you a full 5-year bumper-to-bumper warranty that it almost feels like we're cheating because they're going to last 14 years. But that includes the refrigeration system, and that was the big component behind there. It's the first refrigeration system that was designed to operate that long, running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Okay, so it's one thing to say you're going to build that, then you got to test it, you got to make sure that it works. So the question becomes, how did we do?
First run with Anden humidifiers in the room, and we're about to harvest, and it's made a pretty big difference. The oil production's up, and we'll see when we test, but having that low RH at night has definitely made a difference. Yield will probably increase, and quality will definitely increase.
We were able to keep Greg locked right where Greg wanted to be, which that was just put on camera by him last week. That's when he just finally turned his harvest. We were able to drastically increase his oil extraction, and you could see the quality of the product. I mean, it was enough to, floor him. So we are in the process of getting ready to make every single dehumidifier they have all across the company ours. And it really, I'll be honest, the dehumidifier is one component of that, but the real component is we understood how to balance the environment better. We took into account everything. Because we work with companies like Trane and Lennox and Carrier who do all these big air conditioning systems, we know how much moisture their air conditioner removes. Because we know that, we can take into account what the total load calculation is for the whole room, not just put a dehumidifier in there because you need 2,000 pints per day. Well, do you? Most grows that we went into didn't even come close. The person that we did in Colorado Springs, Colorado, had 200 pint dehumidifiers in his room. By the time we balanced out the room, he replaced them with 130 pints. Think about what that does to the electric bill. If you balance a room, you control it, and you put those pieces together, you're going to save money, you're going to get increased yield, and at the end of the day, it's what it's all about, yield. Now, we took it a step further. Everybody, no matter what size, should be able to get that type of control. You shouldn't have to only get that on gigantic type systems that cost, mortgage something in order to buy them. Leads us to something that nobody here knew we were even doing. Here are 2 new units that are going to be made available in the next couple of weeks. This is an Anden dehumidifier that is built to exactly everything that you just saw. That's going to be in place at the portable consumer hobbyist level. So you just want something itty bitty for no matter what size it's going to be. So you got a little basement conversion you're doing. Imagine being able to get a dehumidifier that's built that well, but paying the same price that you've been paying for these portable dehumidifiers that have a 1-year warranty behind them. Full 5-year warranty, fully portable. Right on the top of those are those digital controls that measure to within 1.5%. Those are pretty cool. What's that? At the point at where that control is. Yes, you can get the same control that you have on the big ones, you can attach to one of these. Now those don't come with that control, but again, because we own the control, they're not, they can be hooked up to remote sensing. I can't tell you, you're gonna have to talk to, come on, your host, man. I was gonna say, they actually don't even know the price point yet, but they're gonna be killed, they're very sure. But yeah, that will be able to do everything that the other ones can. Those things are great. We got one of those running at as a test grow. So this guy had his basement hooked up. His basement had 2 grows in it. Each grow had about 4.5 full-time running systems. So I'm just doing a little. There's about 80 pints in each one. So these are designed, I kid you not, so you can apply ductwork to it either side of it. And you can, with the dehumidifier can control a damper that you can put on it, right? And it will measure one room, dehumidify that, and then measure the other room and dehumidify. So it's one dehumidifier doing 2 separate rooms. He has them running opposite light cycles. So one dehumidifier doing the job of 2. Yep. And that's something. So, I promise it wasn't going to be hopefully that long-winded. But what I want you to take away from this, and we're the great, no, I'm just kidding. More than anything else, this is secret that we have found to increasing the quality, increasing the yield is probably of no shock to anybody, controlling the environment. There's a really, really easy way to make sure you're doing it the right way. And that is to ensure that you are not taking for granted how different your room can be left to right, top to bottom. In a standard building like this warehouse right now, the temperature at this floor to the temperature of that ceiling is probably not that much different. But there's not 15,000 watt double-ended light bulbs hanging up there either. You know?
Anybody that's got a big room can see 10% if they can.
How about the air conditioning system that's gone in? Did they put one place that's blowing cold air into the room? Did they put two? Did they put 10? I mean, everything is different. So by being able to measure at the source where you want to control it, and then keeping that to within 1.5% of where it should be, that was the secret. That's how we, took Shango to the next level. And they're not the only ones. They're the ones that we partnered up with for the big test. So with that, does anybody have any questions?
Should you clean up the coils of a dehumidifier like an air conditioner?
So the answer to that is yes, but if you're changing your filter regularly enough and you are using a protected coil, your coil should remain fairly clean for a fairly long time. I would still clean them every once in a while, but with these dehumidifiers, usually just water.
Just water, not an evaporator or condenser cleaner?
As long as you are not subjecting these things to, it's one of the things that we learned at Anden. The amount of CFM that one of these dehumidifiers is actually pulling across the coil is not the same amount of CFM that, like, say, your air conditioner has pulling across its internal system, right? As a result, you're not pulling that much particulate into the coil as long as you've got a good filter. It's one of the reasons why our systems seal the filter to them and they're not just wobbling around them. It's because if we can keep it sealed, we can ensure that everything gets passed through that filter, which means all particulate. The filters that are inside these, and most of the humidifiers are at least MERV 8, if not MERV 11. The MERV 11 filter captures virus inside particulate. Anything that's smaller than that making through that filter is not going to change the efficiency of it. So most of them can just be cleaned with water. As a matter of fact, on those smaller ones, it's a washable filter. So
Are the smaller ones gravity?
the smaller ones are positive pressure cabinets. So this unit will actually push the water out. That's different than pushing the water up. Okay? Out is not up. But yeah, clean the coils, but if you're changing your filter regularly enough, you're going to be pretty I guess it depends on your room too. I mean, there's so many variables there. But the message is changing too. Any other questions?
You recommend over a larger area, multiple smaller units as opposed to trying to attack larger rooms with huge units?
I would never set up a room that was bigger than 400 square feet with one. Yeah. So let me be clear. In this world, there are two things that I have learned over the course of the past 2 years that are really cool, and that is redundancy and teamwork. Okay, 230-pint dehumidifiers. I can't speak for everything. Two of our 130-pint dehumidifiers will do a much better job than one of the 220. Okay, and that's because the two will work together. Now you're measuring at two different sides of the room, right? So you've got two different parts of the environment covered. But more than that, these are mechanical devices. I mean, knock on wood, everyone should last forever, right? But they're not going to. And if one fails and you've got one dehumidifier, that's it. Versus if one fails and you've got another one still running, that tied in with your air conditioner will probably keep you safe long enough to solve the problem. So as a matter of fact, even when we size them, we always size based upon the air for multiples. So if I had a room, as an example, that needed 260 pints of removal. One of our 300-pint dehumidifiers could take care of that room, no problem. But we quoted that. We would quote 2 of the 200s because then if something went wrong, you're going to have that built-in redundancy. Now you could choose to buy one of the 300s, but at the end of the day, we're talking thousands of dollars worth of products, and I wouldn't risk it. And again, I'm a huge fan of multiple points of measurement.
How do you compare like water efficiency against water quality?
Oh, so these are designed completely different. Yeah. Two kind of different sides of the spectrum. So if you're talking the big water chilling systems, those things are awesome, but man, do they cost a lot of money. I have not seen many professional growers using those until they get to really large size growers. Now, smaller water chillers are great.
I actually have some.
Something that you probably wouldn't hear from a lot of people. I'm going to talk about one of our competitors. Quest makes a desiccant wheel system that's a very good desiccant wheel system. The whole concept of that desiccant wheel is you want to take your humidity level from that 50% level down into the 40s at cooler growing temperatures. I'm going to tell you right now, no refrigeration-based mechanical dehumidifier is designed to do that. Everybody might tell you they can, but they won't, and it certainly won't. We'll take it down 50%, we'll do a really good job at that. But if you want to crash below that, you need something like their desiccant system. Now, you wouldn't put only desiccant systems in that room because it would cost you a fortune in order to be able to handle that. You pair the two together. A mechanical base, a mechanical base to take the major part of your load, and then the desiccant for your crash. But yeah, it depends on the size and the shape. I mean, one of the jobs that we did is acreage farms up in Canada. You know, it's a 100,000 square foot facility, but it's broken into 10,000 square foot sections. If they were doing a whole 100,000 square foot facility, you'd probably want to do a water chiller system. It would cost you $750,000, but it'd be worth it. But because you're broken into 10,000 square foot, it would be massive overkill. It wouldn't do what you wanted to do. And mechanical can do it much more tightly anyway.
There's nobody over there. There's nobody up front either.
You see this?
Any other questions? Feel pretty good? All right, how do I don't know where any of the program people are. I want to find out how we do the drawing.
Oh, so everyone has a